It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello, all.
And Liz Newman.
Hey, everybody.
How are y'all?
We're doing good, Ed. We're doing really good.
Hey.
What do you know? What do you know? We're a really big show.
I hope everybody's doing okay out there. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy? You know, lack of sleep does wonders to your brain, you know?
It does. Not good wonders, but wonders.
I didn't say good or bad. I just said it does things. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my mind went blank.
Insert comment.
Yeah.
I agree with the previous statements.
I'll go with that. Oh, man. No, I haven't really watched a lot. I've, not to be all whiny complaining, I've had this thing going on with my eye, and it's way past time that I should let a professional take a look and see what the hell is going on with my eye.
Oh, God.
But I keep taking Benadryl and hoping that that's just, you know, once I get all the dust cleared out of my house, maybe.
That never happens. It's a house.
Never.
It collects dust. It's what it does.
Yeah. Well, right now we have a lot of sheetrock dust from them tearing the windows out. And had I have known, been a little more prepared for windows, I would have, you know, laid something down. But I have hardwood floors. So short of mopping, which I'm really not wanting to move furniture and stuff to do, I don't know how to get it all up. So, and I don't feel like mopping, being doped out on Benadryl. So, kind of a catch-22 right now. But, no, I haven't really watched anything other than a bunch of drama going down on YouTube, which you guys don't want to know about. I'm sad I even watch so much of this shit. You know, you hear something going on, and it's like, I know that person. I think right now it's, what is her name? I know her as Miranda Sings, because she had like a Netflix special. And sadly, I watched that special, and it was kind of like, oh, this is just dumb. You know, I don't know why I even finished it, because the whole time I'm sitting there asking myself, why am I watching this? This is just dumb. I guess I'm too old for it, because I didn't get half of it. But she's in some drama.
It's possible that it could just not be funny.
It probably is, but it's pretty bad. If you've ever seen it, you know, and I don't even know how to describe what she does. You know, it's dumb. But
Is it comedy?
I guess she thinks it's funny.
Oh, okay. One of those people that laugh at their own jokes. Okay.
Yeah, but
You apparently
it's
sold
kind
that to Netflix, but anyway.
It's like this girl. Well, she sold it on Netflix probably because of her following on YouTube. I didn't realize she was that big of a thing until the tea dropped on her, you know. And I hate even calling it tea because, you know, someone's trauma here, I'm sure, you know, but I haven't found it. I think what's happened with her is she has such a stupid sense of humor and lack of boundaries with her fans. And now it's all come to a head. You know, what she finds funny is just gross. And I've seen this happen before. Not that some subjects are ever funny, but we're kind of in a different time than we were, say, 10 years ago. You know, 10 years ago, you could say some pretty stupid, disgusting shit, and it was funny. Nowadays, people will get very upset and pick that apart like you really meant what you said, and you can't be that kind of funny anymore. And I think she's caught up in the, you can't do that. That's not funny anymore. You know? Not that it was funny then, but I guess it was more, I don't know.
Accepted?
Yeah. You know, people weren't told to be offended by it yet, you know.
Well,
and
shocked laughter and amused laughter, we've gotten better at telling the difference in the last 10 years, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And I guess what she does is for like a lot of shock. And I won't say she hasn't done some inappropriate things that me myself as an adult would be like, no, honey, you know. But knowing the kind of, I don't know the kind of person she is, but knowing the show that she did, that's kind of who she is, kind of thing, you know. So, yeah, it's just crazy. I think people, I don't know, you just really got to watch what you say and how you are. What you think is completely appropriate, someone could come along and go, no, you can't be that way because you have minors watching you, or, you know, you shouldn't have to tell people that, but common sense isn't too common.
Common sense is a lie.
It is.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah. And yeah. So I got way too involved in that. And I guess because some of the things they've said, I can't see it. So it's like maybe I just haven't watched the right video where they played what she said or what she did, but you know, I won't say she hasn't been inappropriate because she has. But I don't think it's something, you know, I can't say the words, but I can't think, I don't think that she's what they say that she is. She's stupid, she's inappropriate, yes, but she's not a predator, you know. She's just stupid. Not that that's an excuse, but, you know.
She'd love to have your comments.
Right.
Be sure to look her up.
Right. Some unknown blogger thinks you're stupid. Now, I think her problem is her audience is too young for her kind of humor and her jokes. But the older audience is too old for her kind of humor and jokes. So she missed her age to do that. She should have done this kind of humor when she was a teenager, 20s. But now she's almost 40 and you need to knock it off. It's not funny. It's not cute. So, and then to change the subject, the baby's been watching, you know, she's always on her tablet, but Amazon's been pushing, you know, Transformers and that kind of thing. But one of them was Clifford the Big Red Dog. And so she starts asking me about him, and I'm like, oh my God, I have never shown her Clifford the Big Red Dog, you know. So immediately we go to the cartoons, and she's kind of like, I don't know, you know, she watched some of it, but then we pulled up the movie. I guess I've never seen that movie. I'm kind of sad I played that movie. Me and her both. Now, like I said, I've been on a lot of Benadryl this week, but there's one part of the movie where she's got to send Clifford away because people want to catch him and hurt him. Which, oh my God, try to explain that to a 4-year-old why people would want to hurt a dog. But he's on this boat and he just starts crying, and baby starts crying. I'm crying because the dog and the baby's crying. So it's like, yeah, let's find something else. So,
I'll get you for this Netflix.
I didn't realize that movie was so sad. I'm used to Brandon watched it all the time on PBS when he was a little kid, and it's cute, happy-go-lucky. They help each other out. He's got a group of little dog friends. She loved him so much, so he grew big. Cute story. But when you put it to live action, I mean, he starts off his siblings, he's left alone in this warehouse, and his siblings are like taken away to the pound. And I mean, it's yeah. I didn't think that there would be so much that I would have to explain to her. And how do you explain people don't want their animals? That we have places like pounds for, sadly 80% of it's unwanted animals, So yeah, it was not ready for that. So if you have kids, I would actually say probably under the age of 8, unless you really want to talk about some really sad stuff, I wouldn't watch it.
Show 'em Bambi.
Right. Oh no, she's
Old
not
Yeller.
going to watch Bambi.
Yeah.
Teenager. I still can't watch all of Old Yeller, knowing that it's coming. And
What?
it's oh. Yeah. Spoiler. That's from what, the 50s? Yeah, there are a few that she won't be able to watch till she's a little older. But, in my horror group, though, as someone brought up the question, why do people get so upset when the dog dies, but, they don't flinch when humans do? And it's kind of like, how much time you got?
Right. If I have to explain
Humans are
this to you,
expendable.
Well, pets are intelligent animals, so, as
Well,
opposed to people.
I think what gets to me the most is, as people, we can run, we can yell, we can get a gun, we can get a baseball bat, we can defend ourselves. We have a voice with
Have you
animals.
watched horror films?
Right.
80% of them don't.
Right.
They stand there and go, oh my God, what the hell? And that's the last thing that goes through their head, other than the axe.
Yeah. But most of the time, these animals in horror films are dying protecting that idiot. Or
That's
it's
what
even
they're paid for.
sadder, is they won't fight back because the person doing it, they're supposed to be their friend, So yeah, I cry a little bit more. I mean, you guys know there's been movies that I just won't watch after that because it's like, nope.
Like the Blob.
Emotional damage.
That's right. Make a note that was Les that brought that up, not me or Mike. So
Yeah. Big Red Dog, Clifford. He goes on the list with Old Yeller. I don't even know if she got the dog back because we couldn't watch it after that. Knowing these live actions, probably not.
see, and all of this goes back to my point from last week, which was you don't always need to see the origin story.
No. I think I think PBS does a pretty good job of explaining his origin story in the theme song. Less than 30 seconds. Boom, bang, bing. She loved him. He grew. Here we are.
Right, that's all you need to know. You don't need to
That's
know
it.
all the sad shit that might have happened.
Yeah. Where he
It's
came
just
from,
not-
you don't care.
I mean, admittedly, I was talking about Batman at the time, but still, that's a depressing origin story too. So
That is.
we just don't.
Yeah.
We don't need it every time.
No.
It's you're milking it. It's not gonna keep. It's gonna lose its emphasis. You're gonna lose the emotion behind it. You're gonna lose what makes it important if you keep just saying it over and over again.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, and I think partly too, this suffered because you're making a whole 2-hour movie out of a 15-minute theme song.
Right, out of a series of books, all of which are like 24 pages long. I mean, come on.
Well, no,
How?
the Big Red Dog is completely before she gets to Birdwell Island. This is like before the book started.
So so
Like,
the movie is a prequel.
yeah,
That's ridiculous.
that a 15-minute theme song
Why
told
would
us
you
what it was, you know.
do that?
I don't know. Like I said, what I saw of it, it wasn't.
But all you're going to
It
do is
wasn't
traumatize
needed.
children.
It. If you go to the cartoon is probably for the age groups of probably 2 to, I'm going to say 8 or 9. 8 or 9 is probably, it's a little bit childish for them at that point. So that's your age group. That's your target audience, and this is what they gave us. So it's kind of like, wow, you know. And like I said, not to be like, oh my God, it was awful, but I had to explain why animals are dumped, what a pound was, why people wanted to hurt a dog, why people wanted to put a dog down for being at a pound. I mean, it was just like, wow, this is
Heavy shit
more
for a 4-year-old.
exactly. This is more than I want to talk about right now. And then, like I said, with her crying, it was like, no, I'm done. You know, this is because even if it got better after that point, at that moment, she was like, oh my God, you know, the only person who loved this dog, and now she's put him on a boat, you know. So, according to the theme song, it's a happy ending, but it just was like, no, why would you?
Why put yourself through that?
Yeah, you know. It should have been a light, cute story because, like I said, look at your age group there, you know.
It's not supposed to be the teenage emo version of Clifford the Big Red Dog. Fuck.
Now, I don't know if they were trying to capture the people who like Brandon. You know, I can guarantee Brandon hasn't watched this movie. He
would probably hate it as much as you do.
Right, because he grew up with the cartoon and the books.
Right.
You know. But I think that's who they were trying to get, and it was still like, no, there's too much. It's sad to say, but there was too much emotion in it, and the wrong emotions were involved.
Right.
But yeah, and then from that we went right back into the cartoon, and the cartoon's fine. He's fine. He's with Emily again. He's got his little buddies, you know.
Right, it's all good.
Yeah. But I'd have to look who did that, but it was, like I said, not what I was expecting to show a 4-year-old. You know?
Yikes.
Yeah, I'm not saying who did that. I don't recall seeing PBS anywhere on that, because sometimes they'll be like, you know, oh, it was put out through Paramount. Okay. But still, that was kind of like, wow. So now I'm curious, what the hell did they do to Dora?
I always go back to Robot Chicken for that. But anyway. Not necessarily less emotional damage, but at least it's actually funny.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you can get somebody to feel something, hey, that's cool, but yeah, not like that.
Right, but you have to figure out if it's really that important, and if maybe that's the right subject matter for it, and that sort of thing.
Or just remember what your audience is. You know, yeah, it's cool for people like Brandon and heck, even me to go back and go, hey, my kid used to watch that, but that's not going to sell all your tickets. You know, that age group is what's going to sell your tickets.
And that age group is also big on repetition, so that's a good thing. But this is not a I want to watch this again movie for a 4-year-old.
No. And I could see maybe like Teen Nick playing it on their channel, but I don't think PBS. No, I don't think they would ever play that there. Just that audience, more of a Degrassi kind of audience instead of, you know.
Right, but anyway, I find myself wondering if that group would really be interested in a Clifford the Big Red Dog movie.
No,
I mean,
they would have done better with that age group instead of trying to make it live action. Just give them a really good cartoon. That would have been great, you know.
Well, I don't think your failure is live action. I think your failure is the story.
Yeah,
I mean,
but they had to bring it to real life, you know, and let's show them the real struggles that a dog goes through. No. Not at 4 years
that's
old.
That's not what the show is about. That's not what the property is about. Why would we change that now?
Yeah. And if you think of Clifford's love. That's what made him so big. You know, it wasn't magic. It wasn't hocus pocus. It was love. And then to take it from that to he's going to die and they're going to cut him up. And it's like, dear God, you know, they even took blood from this dog. And we saw that.
Wow.
Yeah, so it totally missed the mark. But, you know, with all of these live actions and people getting upset and blah, 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 this is part of the problem because it doesn't need to be done. And then when you handle it so poorly like this was done, oh, geez, nobody asked for this. Nobody asked for a 5th Lion King live action CGI, whatever the hell they're going to call it this time. You know, nobody's asking for this. We were fine with the classics. Kids today are fine with the classics.
Right, make their own.
You know,
make new classics. That's the deal.
Stop
trying to milk old ones.
Yep. You know, and then finding every other reason that this movie bombed. No, the movie bombed because nobody asked for it. It was stupid to begin with. You know, leave the classics alone. You know, you will never match the nostalgia. There you go. You'll never match the nostalgia from the originals when you try to redo it. It just messes it up at that point.
Right, especially if you're going to jack with the tone so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, you're taking a kid's story. You're taking a preschool aged story and turning it into this weird emo drama thing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
I'm curious what the rating was on that. PG, but still, you know. And from the commercials and the trailers, you don't really get that's the kind of story you're about to get from this. You know, I kind of thought it was going to be all the ways of hiding them, like from the landlord kind of thing, not guy at a chemical lab and wants to cut them to pieces. You know? That's crazy.
Well, I mean, in a way, I guess it worked for 101 Dalmatians, but still. That's a bit of a different take. That's a different approach, and that's, I mean...
But, you know, the cartoon itself was already dark. Lady wanted to kill dog for coats. You know, that's kind of what captured the kids at that point, because it was kind of like, whoa, nobody does that, you know. So I think it translated better into live action because it was already dark to begin with, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What was her name? Emma Stone, who did the
Cruella.
There you go. Her name. I kept wanting to say Maleficent. It was like, no, it's not Maleficent. But that I thought that was handled pretty well. But it was hard to mess that up because she was a dark bitch. How do you mess that up? You know, to give us anything less than that would have been out of character. So I think that's, like you said, the tone definitely needs to stick with the original.
Or at somewhere close, anyway.
Yep.
I mean, not so far out there.
Yep. Because if you're expecting a cute story, and oh my God, could you imagine if I would have taken her to the movies? Do people leave the theater crying? You know, it wouldn't have been good, you know. So,
No, I can't imagine who went to see this in a theater.
yeah. Or what the impression was, and I also understand. I'm a dog person. You guys know all the work I've done with animals and that kind of stuff. So sometimes these kind of stories kind of hit me a little harder than I guess most.
Sure.
But
oh wait, you like dogs? What?
Yeah.
Huh?
But when a 4-year-old picks up on that too, it was just like, wow, this is too much, you know.
Yeah, that's.
So yeah, don't see it.
Now I'm going to be scared to see what they did to Carmen Sandiego.
Oh, I would be too. Or we'll have to start burning studios down over Magic School Bus, you know. No.
I'll lead that.
Leave her alone.
So many possible reactions to this. The funny thing is what pops into my head, and it's actually making me want to see it more, is the Pooh Blood and Honey thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I am now more curious about that after having heard about this Clifford thing.
Yeah.
Because of, again, that huge jump in tone, and how bad does it really screw things up, and how does it work, and how well did they do it? Because I find myself wondering if there's any connection.
Yeah. But imagine going into that thinking you're going to see Winnie the Pooh.
Right.
And you see.
But see, I remember seeing
no
the trailers
warning.
for that, and it was not that for sure.
Yeah,
They communicated the tone in the trailers, and if Clifford didn't do that, then they screwed up bad on that.
Bad. Like I said, it looked like more of a hide and ghosty kind of thing, but not a life or death kind of thing, you know.
Oy.
But I mean, I will say though, most kids who act, you know, the younger kids who act, you can usually be like, okay, you know, they're a kid, we'll let that slide. The little girl who played Emily in there, what is her name? Darby Camp. She actually did a really good job. I mean, for emotional as it was and everything else, little kid nailed it, but should she have had to?
Right. Not in a Clifford story.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Seems like they'd have been better off handing it to Tim Burton, but at least he knows how to make a kids movie.
Yeah. And
they're weird kids movies, but they are kid appropriate movies.
Yeah. And you would have walked in with the idea of this is going to be weird.
Right.
You know.
The Corpse Bride.
Yes. One of my favorites.
That's a kid appropriate movie?
No, it's not. I would say that his work would start with like tween and up. Kind of like Emily Dark. That kind of age group is when you can start with Tim Burton.
See, I wouldn't have any trouble. Okay, so my kid's weird, but I wouldn't have had any trouble sitting him down at age 10 with Beetlejuice. Yeah. I would have expected him to maybe make some faces, and I would have been happy to explain stuff, but I wouldn't have had any trouble with that.
Yeah.
He doesn't get into movies, but
I think, you know, that and Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah.
That would have been fine for, you know, a kid. I think actually like Nightmare Before Christmas, it is a little in a dark theme, but that would be okay for kids. Like I said, with Corpse's Bride, you do have to kind of explain death a little bit, but
Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that would be more teen too. And James and the Giant Peach, I think, is more like tween teen.
James and the Giant
Just-
Peach is a weird fucking book, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know
it's a
about
weird subject too, So So yeah, his work you kind of have to use discretion, and it also depends on the kid.
Right.
Leanne will watch some of the stupidest, scariest stuff, and it's kind of like she doesn't flinch, but make a car turn into a zombie, and it's like, turn it, it's scary. It's like, what?
that. Right.
We just watched this in shark version, and it was fine, So,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't-
knowing your audience is a big part of it.
yeah.
And it sounds like you're still having trouble figuring out your audience, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You're working on it. It's cool.
Well, and that kind of backfired because it was kind of like, cool, I can kind of introduce her to something that my kids were into, and then that went bad.
Mm-hmm.
She's probably like, damn, Mimi, what the fuck do you do to your kid?
watch
That's what we've been asking.
Watch her go home that night and walk up to James and pat him on the hand and say, "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry,
He's
Mimi was mean to
crazy,
you."
Man. Oh, all that baggage. Whew, he'd go around the world.
Absolutely. Oh man. Well, not bad for not having anything this week.
Right?
Good luck.
Just a little emotional trauma. There you go.
Just a bit.
Now, somebody out there is going to watch Clifford and go, what?
They're
Maybe.
going to do a book report.
She cried
on it.
over this?
Yep.
But apparently it is on Paramount if you guys want to be traumatized.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm good.
Yeah.
I trust you. I trust the Leanne test. It's cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, gosh, I don't know if I can top all that, but I did watch another old movie. This is actually sort of a horror film. It's funny though. Well, not that kind of funny, but that's beside the point. I watched a movie called The Old Dark House. This is made in 1932. So it's not the remake. I actually didn't find out about the remake until after the fact. I am now curious about the remake. It looks very different. But the original from 1932 was directed by James Whale and stars, or at least sort of stars, Boris Karloff. I was a little disappointed by his character in this, but that's what we'll get there. This is basically hot on the heels of Frankenstein, who both were involved with. But this is a very different movie. It's billed as a horror comedy. I'm going to say right up front, I didn't really see anything comedic about this movie. There was some dialogue that was back and forth that could almost be considered funny in the right circumstances. Didn't really strike me as funny. But this, in addition to Boris Karloff, this also stars Melvin Douglas and Gloria Stewart and Charles Laughton, and Ernest Thesiger is in it too, who was the guy who a couple of years later was Dr. Pretorius in Bride of Frankenstein. That was interesting. His role was very interesting. But so this movie is the story of a couple of different groups of people traveling through the Welsh countryside during a really bad storm, and they stumble across this house in the kind of in the middle of nowhere. That then they all get kind of trapped there by the weather. There's the first group is 3 people. There's a married couple and a friend of theirs. And then a second group comes in, which is a kind of a minor nobleman and the young lady he's hanging out with. And the people in the house, there's you initially meet a brother and sister who lived in this house forever, and eventually there's a couple of other characters. I won't go too far into spoiler territory just because it's fun and interesting. In a horror movie sense, not in a comedy sense. Turns out one of the people that is also in the house is some kind of lunatic, and that whole thing goes wild at the end. But yeah, so there's a little bit in this movie. First of all, the first half hour is basically everybody showing up in this house. And then, so there's a lot of like chatting and kind of getting to know characters, which is a little ham-handed, but otherwise not bad. And then creepy shit starts to happen. And not even all that creepy. It's just they're sort of uncovering the mystery behind this family, in which eventually, like I said, the lunatic thing happens, and that's not good. But Karloff, I was disappointed that his character wasn't more involved in the story, because basically all he did was grunt, because he's like the servant guy in this house, and he's mute, so all he does is grunt, and there's some makeup involved, which basically just involved essentially adding fur to the guy, which sucked. And he ends up releasing the lunatic. But otherwise, he's like a total non-factor in this movie. It's more about the strangers who showed up and who were kind of getting to know each other, and there's like almost a romantic tinge to it. I mean, there's a solid romantic piece of it, but overall, it's almost more of a romance than a horror comedy. That said, I liked it. I think I kind of liked it because it didn't, unlike Liz's issue earlier, I liked it because it didn't hit my expectations exactly right. It was not what I was expecting based on the description, but not necessarily in a bad way, unlike Liz's. Overall, as a follow-up to Frankenstein, I would say it's not quite there. I would have liked... I'm not sure. This is not what I was expecting as a follow-up to Frankenstein. I mean, I realize James Whale directed things other than horror movies, but I'm not used to seeing Boris Karloff in them. So there was a lot left on the table there. But overall, it was a pretty good movie. Like I said, there was apparently a remake that was directed by William Castle in 1963. I now want to find that, because I think it's a different. I think it's somewhat the same story, but I'm thinking it's going to be very different. So I'm going to try to track that down sometime in the near future.
Cool.
Yeah, the remake is Tom Poston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Robert Morley.
Yeah. And I've been trying to find that for years. I want to see that. I've seen the posting of it at some of the movie theaters, but that one has always intrigued me. Just to see what they can do.
Yeah, especially having seen the older version.
Yeah.
Apparently, the book that it was based on was not a horror story at all, other than being written essentially about post-war disillusionment. Like, okay, because it would have been after World War One. So yeah, I'm like, okay, other than a group of people taking shelter during a storm, I don't know if I'm willing to go back and read the book. We'll put it that way, but I would be interested in seeing how different the movie is from the book.
To me, it's always fun to compare the two.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm similar to you, and I want to see how this all came about and where it varies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, overall, it's on Prime, I believe. I think it was on Prime. So it's accessible. The 32 version is accessible. I mean, oh no, wait, it was on Tubi. I'm sorry, I forgot. Yes, it was on Tubi.
The 63 version is on YouTube.
Oh, interesting.
I just posted a link in our Discord.
Cool.
Thank you.
Might have to check that out sometime soon. But yeah, that's what I got.
Pretty cool.
Thanks for the word.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, Les.
Well, I'm going to say I got a big 0 today. So, didn't really find much to
You didn't
see
come
or...
prepared.
Exactly, that's me. So, that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much. For me, I've kind of got back into watching Bar Rescue. This was a show I was talking about a couple of years back that I was kind of really addicted to, but I kind of fell out. Kind of went back and kind of watched that again a little bit, just see what has happened, especially after the whole thing with the lockdown and the pandemic and how that's affected some people and the results of that, especially with supply shortages and issues with labor and all that. So it's kind of been kind of interesting, kind of going back and watching those again, especially the more newer ones with all this been added into the fold. I mean, that's about it. You know, I don't really want to go into too much more than what we talked about last week, but I think I'm to the point that I think the government needs to jump in and say, you know what, there should not be any commercials for medication, because it just seems like, you know, like we discussed last week, it's like a mini commercial, and they spend most of it saying, well, you need to talk to your doctor if you have this, and then its side effects include all that. And you're just like, so why are you showing me this? Why, you know, you ought to be aiming this to the doctor, saying this is, you know, you may have a patient that may need this, instead of showing to us like what you said, Mike. You know, people going to the doctor want to start talking to them about, well, what about this? Well, no, that's not really going to work in your case, you know, that type of thing. It's really starting to kind of get on my nerves, some of these, especially some of these other ads are really starting to get on with I guess now it's summertime, there's a really big push on texting and driving. So like every commercial break has one of these commercials, and it's a very dumb commercial, and I guess I'm in that, and you guys know where I am right now, but just with my mindset and emotional state and all that, these commercials get on my nerves way too quickly, because it's so stupid. It's like that's the goal. It's just, you know, you know, we can't inform you and say, hey, you may want to try this. Let's have people do the stupidest shit and go, hey, we'll buy our goods or services because these people obviously need it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You've always kind of been low tolerance when it comes to commercials anyway, but
Yeah, it's true, but it just seems worse now.
yeah. I think,
And if you really don't want me to buy your goods or services, use Peyton Manning.
But you know, I think that's why they do that though, is because we're like, oh, that's so fucking annoying, but it's stuck in our head.
Well,
we now are going to remember that product or that TV show, and that's really what they wanted to do, is make you think about it.
Yeah, well, Mike mentioned that last week. You know, it's a win-lose scenario.
Yeah.
For me, because I remember it, but I'm going to remember it, so I'm not going to use that goods or services. So, is that really a win for them? That you've pissed me off so much so that I will never use your goods or services unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Is that a win? I don't think so.
You'd be surprised, though. It's that common sense thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. What is that?
That it's not too common. That's
I mean, what is common sense?
I say that's who they're targeting.
Right. The idea of being top of mind for someone is that regardless of the situation, whatever is top of mind is what they're going to think of, and they're hoping that it will have something to do with the product or service that they're selling.
Yeah.
Or they're hoping somebody will do something stupid and buy something they don't need or something like that. I mean, it could go any number of bad ways, really.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of glad that our show, our humble little show here, doesn't have any advertisers at this point, because, damn.
We just would have pissed them all off.
Not sure how that would have gone at this point, right? Maybe.
Pay us to talk bad about you.
Hey, if they don't have dumb commercials, then hey, they're okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Just have a smart commercial.
Yeah.
There are companies out there that it's their job to make up smart commercials.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of them that are willing to make dumb ones too, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, since I already mentioned it, we do have a Discord that y'all are more than welcome to come join us. We post a lot of news items, stuff for discussion, stuff to kind of laugh at, videos and that kind of thing. We have a invite on our homepage, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Sign up is free. The app is free in all the app stores, so just go ahead and join that. We've had this one going up for about 3 years now, and it's been fun. So,
yeah.
If you like the podcast, you like hanging out with us, then we're usually there. So come join us there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Join us.
Okay. This week we kind of continue our streak of comic book related discussion. For this week we are discussing the 60th anniversary of the first appearance of the Uncanny X-Men. Marvel's Merry Mutants. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Yay. So let's discuss a little bit about X-Men.
X-Men. not on subject, but on subject. Disney Plus now plays the old X-Men cartoons. So.
Like the 90s?
I know.
Like the early 90s stuff?
I think so, yep.
Cool.
I think it's like the first X-Men cartoon. I've been watching some of those off and on. But yeah, this is about the comic books, but yeah.
It's all the same. It all goes together.
Yeah, but that's probably the best cartoon I think they ever made was probably the 90s X-Men.
You mean the best X-Men cartoon?
I thought there was another one after that.
There was, but you were saying
Okay.
that was the best cartoon. I was like, best cartoon ever or best X-Men cartoon?
Best X-Men cartoon, yeah.
Thank
Can't
you.
make me pick my favorite cartoon.
Okay, good, because there's going to be some fighting going on.
Oh, that would make my head explode. Just one?
No. Well, if we do that, we'll wait until later after we've worn you down a little first.
Now, actually, you guys can actually blame X-Men for me being like all into comic books and stuff. I don't remember what issue it was. I kind of have like this cover in my head. I'm wanting to say it was Storm, but I don't know if it was like a dragon or something, but that was the first comic book I think I ever put my hands on. And it was kind of like, wow. I think what drew me to X-Men was they were the heroes, but nobody liked them. Everybody was scared of them. And it was kind of like, wow, you know, I guess, especially at that time in my life when you're starting to feel different, and I was different in school, and, you know, it was kind of neat to see that here's good people and they're outcasts too. You know, they don't quite fit in. They, you know, you walk into a room and people know who the mutant was. So, that's what always drew me to them. I later found other things, but I think X-Men was the first one where it was like a friend was like, hey, read this, you know. Which is weird, right? Being how big in DC I am, and now that it was actually Marvel that pulled me into comics.
It's only weird to you.
Yeah.
None of the rest of us have a problem with it.
But, you know, I've always said this. Marvel just never wrote anything that appealed to me, but this did. I mean, yeah, you have Peter Parker, who was a young kid and trying to, you know, make it work and everything else, but he still had friends. People liked him, you know. When Spider-Man did something, they cheered. When the X-Men did things, it either had to be in secret or, you know, they got in trouble for it, and it was always doing the right thing, you know. And I guess growing up in this time period, too, is why I never found it hard for Wanda to be evil. You know, sometimes she was on the opposite end of them. So, you know. Because what is her dad? Magneto?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the main villain, so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Which puts her in that odd, ambiguous middle ground where sometimes she can be a good guy and sometimes she can be a bad guy.
Yeah. I think Wanda's biggest fight is with herself. She wants to be good, but she's been born into this family and she has these, you know, dark powers in her, and at the end of the day she just wants to be good, you know. That's her fight. Some days she wins, some days she loses. Some days she kills all the X-Men. You know.
Someday the game's rained out.
Right. But I was watching an interview with, it was Chris Claremont, Louise
Simonson?
Simonson.
Yes. And there was one other guy. His name is totally blanking on me. But they were kind of,
I
talking.
remember him.
Yeah, I
Good
do
old
too.
Totally. Great interview, that guy.
Now I'm going to have to pull it up. They were kind of talking about 60 years of X-Men 2 and everything else. And you know what Chris Claremont said that the worst thing about X-Men was? It was Walter Simonson. Was the third guy.
Ah.
He actually said what made him so mad was the crossovers. He said it was the worst thing to ever. It was the best thing of X-Men, he said, but it was the worst thing that could have happened to X-Men. And I thought that was kind of interesting. They were talking about that at the time when these guys took over. Big shoes to fill. When they took over, though, they were kind of starting to find their way and kind of flesh these characters out on their own. But when you had a collaboration come in or a crossover come in, they kind of had to stop their growth on them to, do this big spread and this crossover and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, and sometimes even regress them.
Yep.
Go back to the way they had been a year or two ago, because that's what the other writer knows.
Yep.
Yep.
So he was kind of like that. That was probably the worst thing that happened to them, is them asking them to do that to them. Which, kind of a catch-22, because I think with some of the crossovers is kind of what brought some of the audience to X-Men. X-Men's never, personally speaking, what I've seen, X-Men's never been a real big seller.
It got big.
It got big. Yeah.
Yeah. But it still wasn't putting the numbers out that the other ones were. I think it's always somebody, your favorite that you try to keep up with, But, and then what was the series? Old Man Logan. When that hit, I don't think anybody realized how big that comic was going to be when they did it. I know I didn't order enough. And yeah, I think even with the movies, they've kind of leaned hard into Wolverine to kind of get their numbers, I guess you could say.
That's because the reason they got big, was Wolverine.
Yeah.
Who
didn't come along until what, 75?
We did a show on that.
We did.
It was a little later than that, but not much.
I have a little picture. Hang on.
Yeah, it was about 75, because it had actually been canceled at that point, but they kept it going as a reprint.
Yeah, they did that for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Which
about 4.
Yeah, which surprised the hell out of me. That blows my mind. I mean, that they kept it going that long without new stories at all was just,
yeah.
Well, during the early 70s, early to mid 70s, there was a really big thing, and Les will testify this, to where they did a lot of reprints. There were several series that's all they did. They were reprinting previous stuff. There was Marvel Tales, which was doing Spider-Man. There's a couple others I can't remember right now, but they would reprint early Fantastic Four or early Avengers, and DC did the same thing too. It just for some strange reason it was a big thing for them to do. I guess to expand all their titles, but actually not have to come up with more original content. I don't know. That's something I hadn't really looked into, and I should just for my knowledge. But yeah, it was a big thing back in the early to mid 70s that there was a good 8 or so titles each company, at least 8 to 10. That was strictly all it was reprinting older material.
Yeah.
You remember that, Les?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, you'd
You
think
know,
it must be selling because
Hmm.
they wouldn't keep printing it if it didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they did it. They did it till it stopped selling, or what?
Right.
Whatever else was going on. So yeah, but yeah. But it's funny that X-Men was the only book that had that situation. Everything else, well, it was a brand new series with its own title, and it was a reprint. With X-Men, they had canceled it, but we got to let's keep the name going. I'm sure that's a copyright thing, and just put the reprints, keep the reprints there. That was the only one that I know of that did that.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know why.
And another thing about X-Men, it was one of the few early Marvel titles that was bi-monthly. And Stan Lee was not there too long. I think he only did like wrote a dozen or so issues in it. He was off because he's writing everything else.
Right. Had a lot of pokers and different fires.
He exercised a lot of influence over everything they did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It really wasn't until I think it was Len Wein who started up the new X-Men, and then Claremont took over after him. And of course, Claremont was there through the 90s, so he was there a good 20-something years.
Yep.
And most of what we know of the X-Men, it was from his writing because he was there for so long.
Right. And part of what he was doing was filling in backstories and
Mm-hmm.
and expanding on characters, coming up with new characters. He did a
Yeah.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good stuff. And that's when the explosion happened, of course.
Oh yeah, yeah, because it was from the mid '80s till I don't know when they were the biggest sellers.
There are still multiple X books
Mm-hmm.
today.
Mm-hmm.
So the impact is still being felt.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was huge. I remember the late 80s well in that regard. There was a whole lot of X-Men stuff going on.
I remember us going through those crossovers during the summer.
Mm-hmm. Those ones that Claremont hated so much.
Mm-hmm. But it served its purpose. It got everybody to buy all the other books.
Mm-hmm. Even if just for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, Marvel did that with multiple titles,
Mm-hmm.
the crossovers.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
I know that Claremont is upset over it, but hey, that was their way of doing business. You had the crossover with Submariner, the Atuma series. That hit every title. Spider-Man did it. It was something you just had to prepare for. At that time, you had to save your dimes because you knew the big storyline was coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually did a good job. Not all of them, but most were good reads. I go back to the original stuff with Kirby and some others. That was my intro to the new team of kids with problems. So the angst was there the whole time, of course. About a year later, DC introduced some characters, and that was the Teen Titans. They came about a year after the X-Men did. But they did a different tack on it. They were characters that were really standalone, but in this case, DC decided they needed a new team. So let's toss these kids in as a team and see how things go. Both groups were very successful. Both are still doing well. The X-Men I remember were, 5 people?
Mm-hmm. Originally, yeah.
And they expanded later. I don't know what the expansion rate was for them versus what the Titans was, but I'm sure it was pretty close in timing.
And
it's another case of I know what they're doing, we want to do that too type deal.
And it's funny that you mentioned Teen Titans, because it really hadn't dawned on me until you started kind of talking about it. Yeah, I mean, they're both teenagers and all that, or at least originally. But in terms of publications and all that, both teams were around for several years and had some success, maybe not, been canceled a couple of times. But in the early 80s, all of a sudden you have Chris Claremont for X-Men, and then you have Marv Wolfman for Teen Titans, and oh my God, you know, they're the most popular things on Earth.
The battle was on.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I had not really thought about the parallels between the two titles until now, and it's kind of interesting, because yeah, you got Claremont but John Byrne joined a little bit later and then was gone after a while. But with Teen Titans, it was Wolfman and Perez who were there forever and left. Mm-hmm. It probably mirrors closely to what Claremont did with X-Men, but I hadn't thought about that until now, and that's kind of interesting. It just tells you what happens when you have the right creative team on a book.
Yeah.
Well, and given the similarities, you've kind of got to think that on some level they hit a cultural nerve right about the same time. Because
Right.
You wouldn't have had the explosion otherwise.
Right.
I mean, somehow something shifted, and whether it was in the culture or in the books themselves, all of a sudden the books appealed to a lot more people. Because otherwise they don't buy them.
Right.
Would be interesting to look back and see if you could pinpoint that.
Okay, this is about your reprints you mentioned. Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams got together and wrote number 66 together, which brought Professor X back, and he stopped an alien invasion, and it put him in a coma, and they kind of ended the series with that. It was canceled with that book, but they got the sales reports afterwards, and not wanting to bring the series back entirely, they decided it was worth bringing the series back into print as reprints. So in the late 70s, roughly a 7-month gap of no X-Men comics entirely, the book picked up the numbering with number 67, reprinting the X-Men's first battle with Juggernaut. So it was actually Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil that saved X-Men and brought them, at least kept them in reprints till someone could get a hold of it and bring it completely out.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which a decade later would be Alan Davis.
True. Yeah.
but he did it with the Hulk. So it wasn't an X-Men. He brought the X-Men back into the Hulk. So
Well, I mean, the Hulk is where Wolverine was introduced.
yeah,
That's because at that point they had already done Giant Size X-Men #1, which was where they handed the reins over to where was it?
I think it was
Len Wein and
Yeah.
Dave Cockrum,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically just reinvented the team from scratch. And so then a little bit later, they had this Wolverine guy came along, and they stuck him in the mix too. And then they started selling billions and billions of issues.
yeah.
I'm exaggerating slightly, but it got big, and it got big pretty fast.
Yeah.
I'm gonna post that link in case you guys want to see this.
Okay.
Now, what about the variance between the comic and the films? We'll even start with the cartoons.
I'm trying to remember if... Yeah, I did. Okay, never mind. I was trying to think if I had read the comics before, and I had. I myself have liked the cartoons better than the movies they've put out. I do, my oldest is a big Wolverine fan, so I'm sure I've seen all of them at one point, but not enough to where they really stuck. So I would definitely say, in my opinion, the comics have been better than the movies have been.
I
like Hugh Jackman, though.
I'm not sure it's fair to make a direct comparison between the movies and the comics, because the movies were, well, not to put too fine a point on it, movies.
Right.
They weren't comics. They were meant to highlight the popularity of specific characters, obviously, which is why Wolverine plays such a prominent role in all of them, just about, at least up to a point. I did like the twist regarding that in the first one, but I liked the first movie quite a bit. It was very entertaining.
Yeah.
And the characters were at least similar to what we were used to from the comics. And I actually, by the time the first movie came out, I had actually been not paying attention to the comics for a while. So what I got was, because generally when you do a comic movie, you're not doing something that coincides with the comic. You're doing a story that happened years before that worked really well, or at least you're adapting it from a comic book that sold well.
Yeah.
So you're not getting, I mean, the Spider-Man that you see in the Spider-Man movies is not the Spider-Man. You go directly to the comic, and it's different. The character has moved on and done other stuff since he dealt with that particular story. And
Right.
X-Men was no different. I mean, you're getting, and honestly, the way they were fiddling with it, you were getting different versions of different characters from different time periods. And you got that in the cartoon you were talking about too, because, I mean, you've got these characters that are, some of these characters are original to the original X-Men from the early 60s. And then you're also throwing in ones that were invented in the 80s along with them, almost as afterthoughts in some cases. Not naming any names, Jubilee. But it's not fair. I did not dislike Jubilee. I just didn't know that much about her at the time, because she kind of came after I stopped paying attention. But and so it's a different vibe, and because they're doing the same thing for the movies, you're getting I mean, you're almost forming the team with the first film, but Wolverine wasn't there when the team was formed. So you're getting
Right.
you're getting versions of like Cyclops and Jean that are very different than the ones that Wolverine met when he first started. If they were even there at the time, I don't remember off the top of my head. But so
Part
they're
of that,
inventing new stories essentially that are loosely based on comics from 10 years before or something. Sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
I think part of that though is because it's Sony. It's not Marvel. It's to where Marvel's a little bit more protective of their canon and their characters. When Sony bought them, it was kind of like, no, we bought these guys for the popularity they already had, or we wouldn't have bought them. So we don't really care about the story. Here's the story we're giving them.
Right, but keep in mind that that protectiveness that you're talking about from Marvel is a direct result of the whole Sony thing.
Yeah.
That whole you're kind of not again, you're not comparing timeline straight up because the Sony thing came first. Because Marvel was getting into financial trouble in the early 80s. I think it was early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Oh God, was it that late? Shit. Okay.
Yeah, because at that point they were doing so well that they started kind of buying other companies like Fleer. Because
oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you.
So it was
So yeah, it was after the fact. But I mean, the Sony didn't. I mean, the X-Men movie didn't come out till what, 99?
99. Yeah.
So yeah, so Marvel had sold off the rights to the film rights because they were strapped for cash.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, as over the course of struggling to get those rights back, 20 years later, they had learned, okay, we need to be more careful with shit like this. So yeah, we're going to pay a whole lot more attention to the storylines and the way, and that's where you get Marvel Studios now from. It's because they screwed up really bad a long time ago, and now they're trying to fix it. And so they're being a lot more careful and a lot more detail oriented.
And one clarification, it was not Sony, it was 20th Century Fox. They purchased the X-Men and the Mutants.
Okay. Yep.
Which is now owned by Disney, so
Right,
we're all good
Disney
there.
owns everything, so it's fine.
Yeah. So, yeah, it seems like the whole thing was kind of want to do an all-star grouping.
Sure.
Which makes sense, but yeah, it kind of goes.
Yeah.
It
they want
to
put together the group that's going to sell the
get
best.
people in the gets butts in the seats.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah,
Justice League.
Sort of.
Yeah. Best of the best.
They're cherry picking
Mm-hmm.
in a way that a new writer would come into Justice League and sort of cherry pick a team to put together to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same deal.
Yep.
Except it's
I
not
would.
actually Marvel that's doing it. Right. Absolutely. You want
I
to
would.
pick the characters that you find most interesting because they're the ones you're going to write the better stories for.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's really that simple.
That was one of my things about the cartoon, and I hadn't watched the cartoon in forever, but it seemed like it tended to borrow more from the original source, the comics, instead of trying to create its own stories. Now they did a lot, but it just seems like they borrowed more.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that they did that when you think about the contemporary at that time, Batman the Animated Series. Very few stories were from the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a handful, if that. The rest of it was original content.
Yep.
And I don't know if it was maybe because the writers were more interested in kind of doing something different with Batman, or maybe it's easier for them to do that as opposed to X-Men. I don't know. I've never looked into it, and I don't hold it against the show because I remember enjoying it, but it's been forever since I've seen it. It's not really thrown out there like Batman had been over the years, even after it had been canceled. It was still being shown somewhere, especially on like Cartoon Network or whatever. But X-Men, not so much. So I'm really kind of relying on memories that may not be as
30-year-old
accurate.
memories.
Yeah, as accurate as they were, but I do remember that because it was kind of the same thing with Spider-Man. I mean, the Spider-Man series from the early '90s or so, it was a good show. They kind of borrowed from the books too much, and they would make some weird changes because like they had their own Secret Wars, except for it was only like 5 or 6 heroes. And Spider-Man was leading them. I'm like, okay, that makes absolutely no fucking sense, but okay. Yes, Captain America is going to follow Spider-Man anywhere. Like, okay.
Really?
When Captain America gets his own show, then
he can have his own Secret Wars, and he can be in
There
charge.
you go. Yep. He can be his party.
Well, he let it in the books. I mean, everybody defaulted to him.
True.
It's not like he just jumped up there and said, okay, follow me, guys.
Technically, he was the oldest guy in the room, so, you know.
Well, yeah.
Also the one with the most battle experience, but, you know.
And leadership.
Mm-hmm.
But did he before he was frozen? Most of his experience, he was frozen.
Don't get technical.
What?
Well, was he frozen for like...
The reason he's the oldest guy in the room is because, yes, he was frozen in the ice for 40 years or whatever the hell it was. It depends on when you come at it.
Depends on what,
But
depends on what time.
He had his own comic book back in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Don't go dissing the man.
I wasn't dissing him. I was just saying.
Yeah.
I thought his experience was.
Backpedal.
You can't say he had 80 years of experience when 60 of it was in ice, you know.
Well, it wasn't quite 60, but
yeah, you know.
The reason he's the oldest, yes, he was born in something like 1920. But, right, he did spend some of that time. In suspended animation, we'll say. That was kind of where the joke was coming from, Liz.
Okay.
Somebody should read more Marvel. I'm just saying.
I know.
Whoa. That's a chop right at the knees.
Oh, it's not one that she doesn't take it herself every flipping week. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but you beat the rest of us to it. Come on.
Sorry. Be quick.
No, I
it's
give
okay,
Marvel
Mike.
credit. I give Marvel credit where they do good.
Yeah, you do. You tend to make a big deal out of it, though.
Yeah, you know.
Like, oh wow, it's amazing that Marvel did something right.
Right.
That's how it comes across sometimes.
They pulled their head out of their ass.
Oh yeah, yay for them! Give them a cookie.
Now,
I'm
if DC would ever
that.
do it. Yeah, now if DC would do the same thing, it would be awesome.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Well, we expect it from DC because they are the best, but Marvel,
Meh.
Well, I'm talking about DC pulling their head out of their
Well,
ass.
that's a different problem, right?
No, they need to pull it out of Warner Brothers' ass, you know.
Warner Brothers owns them, so they don't really have much choice. That is an ass hat that they are required to wear.
Yeah, it's just a really big hat.
That's a huge ass.
It's a really big ass. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, this took a weird turn.
It did.
Way to go, Liz.
You can't blame the butt stuff on me.
Oh, like that's not going to make it into the title. Come on.
So let's delve into that part of it.
What, delve into the ass?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Go ahead, Liz.
I think I've already dug my hole deep enough. I'm in the colon.
Don't say
Al?
that.
Oh man.
Yeah, we're like way off track. I don't even know where the track is.
We're in a gastrointestinal tract, apparently.
Mm.
X-Men, huh?
X-Men.
Is
Yeah,
anyone reading it today? Or any of you, me, anybody?
I'm sure there's lots of people reading it today.
Mhm.
I'm not one of
That's
them.
why I designated you, me type situation.
I'm not.
I am
I-
not.
I think the last one that I like religiously read and put on my pull list was The Death of Wolverine. Of course, I had to see how that ended, and
Ended with him dying.
with him dying. Yeah,
He
Go
got,
figure.
he got better.
and it was
Not quite dead yet.
I thought it was interesting how they did that though, because it was kind of like, well, he self heals, and so it was pretty cool how they did that. I think they gave him the death that Wolverine, that sometimes when you lose a character, like, that's bullshit, like Dean, Supernatural. It's just so out of character for him to die that way, or, for that freak accident to happen. But I think the way they actually handled Wolverine was really good. He died kind of redeeming himself, so it kind of made it honorable. So they wrapped that up really nicely. Then a few years later, I think I did read some of Old Man Logan, but I think that's probably been the last run of anything X-Men that I've read.
Oh man, Logan.
Yeah.
Oh, they should make a cartoon of that.
Mm.
And I haven't seen that movie yet either. So I don't know if that one's any good.
But Logan?
Yeah.
Logan is a really good film.
Is it?
Yes. I enjoyed the heck out of it.
I really like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I know it's time. He said that he's hanging up the mantle and it'll be, someone else. But I really hope they really hit that character the way they did with Hugh Jackman.
He said he was done with it until they decided to do Deadpool 3.
Yeah, but that's more of so he can play with his friend Ryan Reynolds. Not a.
He's still playing Wolverine. He's still playing Logan. So I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding what motivates people.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think he looks at it as work though.
Yeah, ka-ching.
If he didn't think of it as work, he wouldn't be trying to retire from it.
Yeah. Well, I meant in Deadpool 3. Him and
Maybe.
Ryan Reynolds have been teasing back and forth with each other, so I think he was done until he saw it was possible for that to happen. It was like, I'd do that. Kind of like Mark Hamill when he retired from Joker, but he came back for that one last one.
Got to tie it back to DC, don't you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I'm not going to start that again. I was kidding.
Every once in a while, Hollywood does it right, and they strike magic, and they cast that perfect person who was made for that role. I will always think Mark Hamill was made for Joker. I know he was some Jedi guy, something like that, but he'll always be the Joker to me. And Kevin Conroy will always be Batman. And Hugh Jackman will always be Wolverine. But there's just some Christopher Reeves. I mean, it's like they hit it and they checked all the boxes right off.
You were going to say something, Les?
No.
Okay.
Nah, he's just breathing again.
Thank goodness.
Better that than the alternative.
Had to train myself to breathe in, breathe out.
Yeah, I'm still working on that training.
Well, we know how successful the books are, and we know that they're making money in the movies. Are they about to hit a snag? Let's say as far as the movies go.
What do you mean by a snag?
The fact that are they hitting the peak? Is that all there is?
Well, you got to think that it's going to be restarted as they're going to be integrated into the MCU proper, so they can literally restart everything. It could be a reboot, but not a true reboot, as like I said, they're being integrated into the into the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when that's going to happen, who knows? Because
Well, they've kind of dropped hints in some of their like TV shows that they've done, like with Wanda bringing Silver Surfer. What was his name? Pierio or brother?
Pietro.
Like Pietro.
Quicksilver.
Like bringing him in. Quicksilver. There you go. Bringing him in, and So, yeah, I think they're trying to, and they've dropped little hints that they're going to do that. To where I honestly thought, at the end of, I think it was the second Marvel movie. I can't even remember what it was now, but it showed Wanda and him in a cell. So they've kind of showed them,
well,
kind of been there, hinted at them being there.
Well, the thing is there with Wanda and Pietro, that's a special situation because they're mutants, but they're more known for being Avengers as than part of the X-Men. So that's how they were able to get away with having a Quicksilver in the Avenger films and then a Quicksilver in X-Men movies. That's how they were able to get away with that legally.
Yeah.
Because technically they could have done an Avengers film and have Beast in it. Because Beast was a member of Avengers for a couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
They could have done that if they wanted to, but there's just so many other characters they could use. So and I'm not discounting what you're saying because in WandaVision they had the, I can't remember his name, but it was the one from the X-Men movies.
In the movies,
X-Men movies show up on WandaVision when it could have been the one that actually played her brother in Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
So they kind of played around with it, that kind of stuff. So they've hinted at it. There's been some references here and there.
Well, and I thought too when Wanda was having her like her big breakdown, and I think it wasn't Carol Danvers, but it was the little girl that she took care of. I can't remember her name, but she was kind of like a cop agent kind of thing, and I think they mentioned Charles Xavier and why he couldn't come help them kind of control her and get her back in her little bubble kind of thing. And then of course in was it Doctor Strange, we did have Xavier there.
We had Xavier, yeah.
Yep. But they could have also been like, this is another world, because it was, but,
Well, I mean, it was a multiverse, so yeah.
Yeah. It was still pretty cool to see him come on,
Because we also had Agent Carter.
Mm-hmm.
As like basically a British Captain America. Captain America.
Yep.
So they've hinted at it, and there was some point the X-Men will be in either the movies or the shows or whatever. But it seems like they're taking their time, which is a good thing. Because I mean, they were already kind of being careful about it, but with the reaction to Phase 4, I'm sure they're being even more so.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think they're going to have to pull something big out.
In what way?
They've kind of hit a lull with their movies now. You had the first 3 phases that came out and just like punched you in the face, you know. And I feel like with Phase 4, it's kind of been more of suck your toe kind of thing. You know? They've been okay. They've been okay movies, but it was nothing like the first 3 phases that they gave us. I think for me, I'm having a hard time getting into Phase 4 because I feel like they told such a good story and they wrapped it up so well that I'm really not interested in what happens after that, you know. So some of the other things that have come out, with the exception of Spider-Man, but I like Spider-Man because they kind of dealt with that. Kind of, this is the aftermath of Iron Man dying, you know. And the other ones didn't really seem to blink, you know. So they're gonna have to hit that again.
See,
they're gonna have to reinvest us and everything else.
I think there's an argument to be made that using Spider-Man movies to deal with the death of Iron Man is maybe not the best use of your Spider-Man movies.
True.
Well, the part that Tony had played in Tom Holland's Spider-Man was a very big mentor role. He relied on Tony for quite a bit, so
which is also un-Spider-Man like, but okay.
Right. But you know, this is Spider-Man. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad the way they played him up with him that way, that they did kind of deal with it. Because I like I said, I feel like the other ones didn't even blink, and in their universe, they lost Iron Man and Captain America and maybe Thor. Yeah, they're fucked. Yeah. So, you know, it would have been nice. Kind of like I was saying with House of M, it would be nice to have some cleanup after that. Kind of, this is the aftermath, and this is how we moved on from that, or where the new heroes emerged from the ashes kind of thing. I haven't seen the Phoenix Rise yet. X-Men pun there, you know.
Oh, okay. I have a question then.
Mm-hmm.
In the Spider-Man movie, No Way Home?
Mm-hmm. That's right after he died, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And they even dealt with that because at the high school, Betty Brant reported about the blip. The blip was where the high school students that disappeared returned.
Mm-hmm.
And when they did, they were 5 years older. If that's true, and the blip was because of the
snap,
the idea that everybody disappeared when Thanos was fought, then why didn't the heroes reappear? I had a problem with that.
Well, some of them died before the snap, though. Some of them couldn't come back because they weren't gone because of him. They were gone because they died maybe fighting, like Vision. He tore into his head before he could get the final stone. So even though, like, Spider-Man came back, Vision couldn't because he died before the snap. So anybody who died in that battle stayed gone. But if you turned to dust the way that half of them did, then I didn't catch the part of coming back 5 years older, though. Because that would be almost mean to put a 23-year-old back in high school. You know?
Which also was covered by Betty, because she was upset that although she had been in school, now she had to redo that grade. She did not disappear like the others, but because she blipped, she had to return to high school to redo her senior year.
Just take the damn GED and be done with it, man. Come
See,
on.
that's what I would have done. If I would have come back and everybody had moved 5 years beyond me, I would have been like, yeah,
Take the test and walk
GED.
away.
Yeah.
It's just easier.
Because I'm 23 and I'm not going to
I'm
school
not
with a
going
bunch
to
of
fucking high
16-year-olds.
school, right? There's no way.
Screw that.
Well, that was one of the reasons that Peter had a problem with one of his classmates who had to redo his senior year. He had blipped and he was put in the position that he had to redo his.
Yeah. One thing I also didn't understand about that movie is if Tony...
One?
Yeah. If Tony was like this really special person to him and he trusted him with like everything that made Iron Man in a pair of glasses, and the first chance he got, he gave them away. What the fuck, dude? You know, Tony's not even cold yet, and some special dude's wearing his glasses, you know, which isn't what Tony wanted. You know, I left him to you, not to Mysterio or whoever that guy was, you know. And they didn't even know him. Nobody knew him. He was like a new guy to the group even. Nobody knew him. But yeah, oh yeah, here, take these glasses that control the world and, you know, that I just lost from my mentors, Uncle Dude, you know. Yeah, that just didn't make sense to me. I felt if Tony would have said, you need to keep these, Spider-Man would have kill me before you take them from me kind of thing. But in the end, I guess he wasn't that special to him. Just some
No,
Gucci
Peter wasn't
glasses,
sure of
you know.
himself. That's why he gave the glasses away.
Yeah, I don't think he dealt with that long enough, because
No.
I think at some point Peter would have said, I don't think I'm special enough, but Tony did. You know, the guy who finally made him see that it was him, not the suit kind of thing. You know, I think he would have believed in him, believing in him a little bit longer than an hour or two. You know? I just think it was given up too freely. Kind of a, yeah, here, you're kind of cool, you know. You control water.
And I thought that was a very special part of X-Men.
Thank you for bringing it back to X-Men. I was about to do that.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Oh, this was going to devolve into something like this at some point anyway. We're good.
Yeah. At least it was Spider-Man.
At least it was Marvel for the moment. Yep, X-Men. Important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of good stuff out there. I mean, admittedly, at 60 years, not everything is perfect and wonderful, but there's some really good stuff. I mean, some of the origin stuff is really interesting back in the 60s, and then, like I said, they were huge in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Late 70s through 80s, early 90s.
That's prime X-Men time
That's
right there.
that's top tier stuff right there.
Yep.
They had a pretty cool arcade game too.
There have been
like
some
in
good
the
X-Men
90s.
video games for sure along the way.
Is that the one with Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Okay.
Potentially, yes. There was one that was
Yeah.
basically Spider-Man and the X-Men, as I recall.
I think that was a comic line in the 90s.
Probably.
The Amazing Spider-Man meets the Uncanny X-Men.
I don't think it sounded quite that dramatic, but yeah.
Yeah, in my head it did.
How about that goofy cartoon, Spider-Man and his friends?
Yeah.
Oh, the Amazing Friends?
Yeah.
That was god-awful.
Firestar and Iceman.
Iceman, yep.
I
Hence,
watched that
X-Men.
one too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think back then, especially that time period, we were just kind of happy with any kind of movie or cartoon that they gave us. If not, you were stuck with Polly Pocket and Strawberry Shortcake. So, Amazing Spider-Man was pretty cool with his friends.
It's all part of the evolution.
Yeah. I do think as a kid, I probably watched more like Spider-Man cartoons than I did like Batman and stuff.
X-Men.
It just,
We're talking about X-Men.
yeah, but you said that, so.
Oh,
Nice try, Mike.
At this point, we
Yeah.
were actually not talking about X-Men, but okay.
well, definitely check out X-Men.
Mm-hmm. And nothing else.
That's right.
No. Nothing.
And I'm taking us to a break right now because holy hell. When we come back, geek news for you. And we're back, and it's time for geek news for you. In this segment, we usually bring a couple of news items to the table for discussion. And this week, it's Les and myself. Les, would you like to go ahead and go first?
Thank you, sir. Actually, I have two small ones. First is coming out from Prime Video is a new series, let's back up. First is a celebrity that is going to produce a movie called Little Bites, a horror movie. This is, the entertainer is Cher. Cher and her offspring, Chaz, will be producing this film, Little Bites. The other one is something that kind of really interests me, and it is called The Horror of Dolores Roach. Dolores Roach is a character who returns to her hometown after serving time in prison. There is a trailer for this, and it is kind of amusing. They equate it to now I can't even think of it. What is the program with Johnny Depp years ago?
21 Jump Street.
No, hell no.
I was supposed to say you're going to have to narrow it down a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, how far
No.
you want me to go back?
Sweeney Todd.
Oh, right.
Okay. Yeah.
They're equating it to Sweeney Todd,
Hmm.
which you know the story there. So you kind of know the story of the horror of Dolores Roach. It looks like it's got a little bit of humor to it, but if I want humor and, no pun intended, served up this way,
So,
I'm going to go with the classic Eating Raoul, which still fascinated me, especially about the production of it.
I like What's Eating Gilbert Grape better, but okay.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape doesn't involve cannibalism, at least not as far as we know.
But it does involve Johnny Depp. See, I brought it around.
So do those damn pirate movies, but that don't mean shit.
Oh, what this?
But I'm truly looking forward to this Dolores Roach program just to see how well it does. 8 episodes.
8. That's good. 8. Anyway.
8.
ATE. No, it sounds like fun.
It does.
Yeah, right.
Okay. No.
Sounds delicious. Is that better?
Cool.
That's
Definitely
it.
So,
cool.
real quick, what do we have any other information on Little Bites?
Let me double check.
Because
Check your sources.
Because otherwise, the comparison, I mean, it's biting, and I don't know.
I think Little Bites is more vampires or something.
Okay.
Well, that sucks.
Oh. Ouch.
I found this on Horror News Network.
Cool.
But that's what I got.
Okay.
Cool.
For mine, it's kind of timely here. On Friday, June 9th, Disney and Marvel had dropped filed some paperwork to drop some lawsuits against certain creators, and those creators are Larry Lieber. If that name sounds familiar, that is Stan Lee's brother. The estates of Don Heck, Gene Colan, and Don Rico, and they were dropped with prejudice, which means they cannot be refiled. These lawsuits were over creator rights, saying certain characters that they created, they own, and Marvel did not, where Marvel said, well, you were work for hire, so we actually owe them. So yes, once again, these have popped up again. Although these have been for a while, because I remember some of these being filed. The only one that has not been settled, and if this actually goes to court, it could get ugly, is the estate of Steve Ditko.
That could get ugly.
Apparently, in May, both sides were trying to get certain wins toward that particular lawsuit. According to this is an article from Reuters. Under the Copyright Act, a creator can terminate a copyright assignment after decades in certain circumstances. Marvel sued the artists who wrote and illustrated Marvel Comics in the 50s, 60s, and 70s after they sought to terminate and reclaim copyrights related to several superheroes. And the ones that were in particular for these four creators, they included Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Blade. So, and of course, the lawyer who is representing the creators is a name that we're all familiar with. If you remember your lawsuits with Marvel versus Jack Kirby and DC with Siegel and Schuster, it's Mark Toberoff. So I wonder, and of course we may never know what was decided. There had been maybe some kind of settlement or some such. I mean, are they gonna get creator credit? I can't see them getting a lot of money, if any.
Right.
But it's kind of interesting because these had been filed a while back, because I vaguely remember them, because I remember Ditko being one of them. I was like, ooh, because you're talking about Spider-Man, who's been mentioned a lot tonight, and Doctor Strange a couple of times, being the chief characters that he created or co-created. So that's going to get messy, because that's a big deal. That's a big deal. That is involving a lot of money, especially on Spider-Man's side.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. That's a tough one. I see both sides of the argument, you know.
All righty. Any special shout-outs or mentions this week?
Not me.
Nope.
Nothing here.
Okay, we'll go on to our regular shout-outs. I want to thank Pop Goes the Culture Podcast Network for allowing us to be part of a great group of fellow podcasts. Definitely check them out. There will be a link in the show notes. We also want you to check out the fine men and women who've been so kind enough to spread the word of the fellowship on Twitter by retweeting our links. That is the people of Potter Family. Best way to check them out is just do a search, hashtag Potter and Family, all one word. Scroll through, and whatever catches your attention, click on that link and download that episode. We hope you have a great time listening. I also want to thank Manny DeMar for supplying the music to the podcast. In our show notes, we will have a link where you can check out their other music. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We value your feedback. Any comments, questions, complaints, observations, suggestions, what have you, please send them our way. Email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, or you can go to the website, go to the About Us page, and there's a contact form you can fill out. If you join our Discord, we do have a channel specifically for feedback. You can post your thoughts there. Social media, we're on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. On Twitter, Instagram, and Hive Social, we are at Fellowship Geeks. If you like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, Mike can be found at Mikey Geek. Liz can be found at LN_Geek. Les may or may not be found at Fake Les Webster. And I can be found at Tom TC Geek. And from wherever you download our episodes, if you'd be so kind as to rate and review the show, it would be greatly appreciated. Anything else before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate you listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We do appreciate your support as always. Until next time, Geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,